Hi, what's up? It's Todd, and today I want to talk to you about a phenomenon I call alpha male or macho dating advice and the disturbing trend that I've seen more and more of it lately. And this is pretty scary because this type of thinking and this type of advice really holds guys back in terms of learning game and having success with women. I know it held me back for a really long time when I was starting out, so that's why I want to talk about it. But what do I mean by this sort of alpha macho dating advice? Well, what I mean is the trend of speaking in very absolute terms and taking this like kind of outlook that the girl can never get one over on me. The girl can never use me in any way. And to an extent, this is good, right? Because a lot of guys are coming into game as we call like average frustrated chumps, to use a term from back in the day. They're coming in as guys who were frustrated, who have been walked all over by girls, guys who are bending over backwards and trying to impress girls. And it can be empowering a little bit to say, you know what, I'm standing my ground. I'm not doing this for you. I'm not going to supplicate. So let's talk about why this macho alpha male type dating advice sounds really alluring and appealing, but it breaks down in practice, it breaks down in the real world. Well, why does it sound appealing? Well, most guys when they come into game have been lost, confused, they've lacked direction. They've lacked a feeling of any kind of control over their dating lives. They felt like they're at the whims of a woman's decision. And so when you take on a rule that gives you the appearance of decision-making power, it feels like it's an improvement. It feels like things have gotten better, right? But think of it this way. If before a girl rejected you and it was at her whim whether she rejected you, she was in control. Now, if you have a rule that if the girl goes silent, you will reject her, she's still in control of whether it ends by going silent to you. You still have not gained any more control. If anything, you're gonna lose more girls because you're losing them just based on silence instead of on an overt rejection. So you've lowered your odds and you haven't actually taken any more control of the situation, but it feels like you've taken control. It feels a little bit better. It feels a little bit more or less needy. It feels like you're in control. So you've made your emotions feel better, but in the real world, you haven't actually gained much. Maybe you have gotten rid of a little bit of neediness, and that is a good thing, right? Neediness is very, very unattractive, but why? Why is neediness unattractive? Well, a big part of it is that it shows insecurity. Now, if you become so caught up on a particular rule, you may have lost some of that neediness, but you're trying so hard not to be needy that you're actually being more insecure in effect. All right, I'm gonna give you a quote. This is a very interesting quote that I read a long time ago. And it said, if you can't put your power down and then pick it back up, you never really had it in the first place. So if you have to cling to this rule to hold on to your power, you actually don't have power because you've switched, maybe the girl had power over you and now the rule has power over you and the girl now through the rule has power over you, but you still don't have power, right? If you can't give a little bit and like be flexible and then pick your power back up, then you still are lacking in power, right? And so what happens a lot of times is guys are so worried about being needy, they become even more insecure. So a situation like you have a date set with a girl and maybe she hasn't texted you that day and you're like, no, I don't want to text her because I don't want to be needy. And then what happens is the day passes, you never go on the date and you never see the girl again. Whereas any normal human being would just text, hey, are we still on? Which maybe isn't the best text in the world because it's slightly needy, but it's a million miles better than being unentitled and not texting at all and not believing that you can stand up for yourself. And that's what happens with a lot of these guys. They become so concerned with not being needy that they become utterly unentitled, which is way more insecure, way more low value than being needy ever would. And understand that, like asking for something, following, going along with something, it can be construed as needy. It could also be construed as entitled, as having self-belief, as having faith in your future self to handle a situation. And that's a much more attractive way to go. So what is wrong with this viewpoint? Why does it not work? The first thing is that it's very absolute. When you say, I will never supplicate to a girl, I will never call a girl back to this, I will never buy a girl a drink. Never and always are really bad words to start having in game because game is so variable and every situation calls for a different approach. So the same thing that may be really bad game 5 minutes in, may be really good game 45 minutes in, right? And if you are taking one path at all times, you're gonna be wrong either at minute 5 or wrong at minute 45. So taking this very like, by the rules, by the book, that kind of an approach, you're guaranteeing yourself that you're gonna be wrong often. You're also stopping your learning curve because you're stopping thinking. And a big part of learning game is thinking, so you're actually slowing down your learning as well. Final reason though, that I'm gonna get into why this doesn't work is that it's fundamentally not in alignment with female psychology. By thinking these things, you're basically acting like women are men. You're acting like women think and make decisions the way that you as a man do, and that's fundamentally not the case. And that's what we're gonna talk about right now. All right, the assumption that this viewpoint is making is that if a woman doesn't like you now, she'll never like you. And if she doesn't treat you with respect now, she'll never treat you with respect. Both of these are fundamentally and absolutely wrong, right? If you talk to a girl for 5 minutes and get her phone number, and then she's not responding to you or not agreeing plans with you, it's not because she fundamentally doesn't like you, it's because she has people in her life that she's known for years and she's known you for 5 minutes. And it's not fair or right to expect that she's gonna prioritize you after 5 minutes over these people she's known for years, at least not on an every time consistent basis. And the fact that she's not giving you that kind of level of respect and deference and bending over backwards for you after 5 minutes of knowing you does not mean that after, another half-hour phone call and getting to know you better, she might not give you a lot more respect, or that after you do get her out on a date and things go really well, she might not treat you in a completely different way. Also understand that as men, our attraction for women is fairly binary because it's mostly based on their appearance. We see a girl and we're like, she's hot, I would have sex with her very, very quickly. For women, it can change very, very quickly. A guy who is boring to them can do something in his actions and stand out very quickly and take himself out of that zone of being boring, especially if he's only been boring for a short period of time. Maybe even faster, a guy who they like, if he does some unattractive things, they can be absolutely repulsed by him very, very quickly. So the point is that the way the girl is viewing you changes tremendously over time. And so when guys, say, okay, if the girl's not responding to your text, the girl's giving you one-word answers, write her off. Well, the fact of the matter is I've had plenty of girls who were giving me very little in text, and we just stayed in contact. I sent them a periodic message, and then months later, literally months later, we met up, had a great time together, and then started dating, right? And so that girl fundamentally was not disrespecting me, fundamentally didn't dislike me, but just didn't know me enough to prioritize me in her life yet, right? And for girls, it's very, very situational. Some of the girls who on paper would be kind of almost the worst people that I've ever dated, when we were very close, were incredibly sweet and nice and gave me tons of respect and deference. Some of the nicest, most amazing, sweet girls I've ever dated, when we broke up, became horrendously, let's just say, bitchy, right? They became not the nicest people to me under the circumstances of us just having broken up, even though they were nice people in the world in general. So people's behavior and women's behavior is very, very situational. And if you just assume that, the girl is obligated to like you and treat you with respect when she barely knows you, and is obligated to bend over backwards and treat you as the most important person in her life on very little information, that is an unreasonable position to take, and it's going to cost you a lot of opportunities. All right, so fundamentally you need to understand that women's attraction is not this binary on and off light switch. It is a dimmer switch. It takes time, and if you just give yourself more opportunity to connect with them, more opportunity to interact with them, things can change for the better very, very quickly. Okay, fundamentally though, even if you were right, even if this assumption were right about women's behavior, which it's not, even then it would be a poor assumption to take, which is what we're gonna talk about next. Think of it this way. If you could assume that a girl likes you or assume she doesn't, you're basically always better assuming she likes you. Here's why. If you assume she likes you and she does, you're gonna act right and things will go your way. If you assume she likes you and she doesn't, well, one, you don't have much to lose because she already didn't like you. Two, because of the confidence from assuming she likes you, you might just convert it over to her liking you. On the other hand, if you assume she doesn't like you and you're right, well, great, good job being right. You didn't achieve anything by it, and it's not gonna go anywhere. And if you assume she doesn't like you and you're wrong, you're making about the biggest possible error in giving up on a good situation. So even if you were right, even if you were correct in assuming that if she doesn't like you now, she'll never like you, and also in assuming she doesn't like you, which are two big assumptions, even then you would be just as good or better off to go the other way. On top of that, and this is very important, that line of thinking is defeatist. That line of thinking is going to lead you to give up on a lot of situations. That line of thinking is going to lead you to quit, and it's going to lead you to not believe that game is fundamentally possible. And I can tell you from experience it is. As someone who went from not having any relationships with girls and not knowing how to trigger attraction in them to being a guy who can trigger attraction in most girls I talk to and can get results with a ton and very high percentage of those girls, I can tell you that believing in game, believing that it is possible to make yourself more attractive is a very useful belief, both in terms of the individual interaction and as a long-term goal, because it's gonna make you find solutions to problems. It's gonna make you figure things out, and it's gonna keep you encouraged and keep you growing and learning, which is fundamentally one of the most important things possible. All right, so for all of these different reasons, it really, really offends, upsets, and troubles me that there's so much of this sort of like alpha male, like just put the girl in her place, don't give in, hold your frame, that kind of advice. To an extent, yes, it is important to hold your frame, but you want to hold your frame softly, and you want to hold your frame from a position of control and power rather than from a reactive place. Remember that if you are reactive and insecure, in order to not be needy, you're probably being even less attractive and even less in control than if you were needy. All right. Also, fundamentally remember that women's attraction and women's emotions do not work exactly the same way that ours do. Just because she doesn't like you now doesn't mean she won't like you in 5 minutes. Just because she's treated you with a little bit of disrespect or even just a little bit of not blowing off the entire rest of her life for you, just because she hasn't done that yet doesn't mean she wouldn't if you went on a date with her, doesn't mean she wouldn't in a relationship. So give her a little bit of credit, be a little bit patient. Obviously, don't bend your life over backwards for a flaky girl. Don't, inconvenience yourself and go off of your path too much. But that said, be reasonable and understand the girl needs time to get to know you, and not every girl is gonna like you in 3 minutes, okay? So be a little bit reasonable and be smart. I promise you, if you do this, you're gonna be a lot happier. You're gonna like women more, and in the long run and the short run, you're gonna do much, much better in terms of results.